welcome back. Tonight, we're stepping into the neon-lit corridors of Freddy Fazbear's mega pizzaplex, where the gleaming surfaces and upbeat melodies conceal layers of darkness that run deeper than rust and decay. This isn't the cramped, mouldering pizzeria of decades past, where animatronics moved with stuttering mechanical jerks and the smell of aged pizza mingled with something far more unsettling. This is something different, something that appears modern, sanitized, almost safe, until you look closer at the glam rock band that commands center stage, where you begin to notice the cracks in the facade, both literal and figurative. Among these performers stand two figures whose stories interweave with secrets both heartbreaking and haunting. Roxanne Wolf, the guitar player whose confidence masks a profound fragility, and glam rock Freddy, the leader whose kindness may stem from a soul carrying the weight of past failures. Their tales aren't simply about malfunctioning robots or possessed machinery. They're about identity, about the masks we wear to hide our vulnerabilities, about grief that transcends death, and about finding redemption in the most unexpected places. Before we begin our descent into these intertwined mysteries, feel free to like and subscribe if you enjoy this kind of deep exploration into the hidden corners of Five Nights at Freddy's lore. And let me know in the comments which glam rock animatronic fascinates you most, and whether you think the theories we'll discuss tonight hold water, or if the truth lies somewhere even stranger. Let's begin. The mega pizzaplex rose from the ashes of what came before, built directly atop the charred remains of the Freddy Fazbear's pizza place that had served as the setting for Henry Emily's final solution, his attempt to end the cycle of death and resurrection that had plagued the Fazbear entertainment for decades. Where that smaller establishment had been designed as a trap, a funeral pyre for tormented souls bound to metal shells, this new structure stretched across multiple floors and wings, a monument to corporate ambition and entertainment on a scale never before attempted in the franchise's troubled history. Shopping areas, food courts, racing tracks, laser tag arenas, bowling alleys, and performance stages all existed under one massive roof, creating an environment where families could spend entire days without ever stepping back into the outside world. At the heart of this complex stood the glam rock band, a reimagining of the classic Freddy Fazbear characters filtered through the aesthetic of 1980s rock concerts and neon excess. Gone were the simple designs of the original animatronics, replaced with elaborate costumes, face paint, instrument accessories, and personalities that seemed to project a level of self-awareness unusual, even by the standards of possessed machines. Glamrock Freddy served as frontman and de facto leader, his bright orange coloring and top hat marking him as the spiritual successor to the original Freddy Fazbear, though his demeanor proved far gentler and more nurturing than any iteration that came before. Glamrock Chica brought her own brand of energetic chaos, obsessed with food in a way that seemed almost programmed into her core directives. Montgomery Gator, the green-scaled alligator who'd clawed his way to prominence through circumstances we'll explore later, played bass with an aggression that bordered on violence. And then there was Roxanne Wolf, the guitar player whose presence on stage commanded attention, even as something beneath her confident exterior suggested depths the designers never intended. What makes these particular animatronics so significant isn't simply their role as entertainers, or even the mysteries surrounding their creation and programming. It's the way they seem to embody very human struggles despite being machines. The Pizzaplex was meant to represent a fresh start, a clean break from the blood-stained history of previous Fazbear establishments. No missing children posters here. No spring-lock suits sealed in hidden rooms, and no smell of decay wafting from party rooms where tragedy had unfolded decades earlier. And yet, the building's foundation rested upon that very history, literally constructed over the ruins where souls had been freed and others left to linger. The glam rock band, particularly Freddy and Roxanne, became vessels for stories that challenged the boundary between what's programmed and what's genuinely felt, between artificial intelligence and something that might be called, for lack of a better term, a spark of humanity, or the echo of something that once was human. The Pizzaplex opened its doors to great fanfare, families flooding through the entrance to experience this new generation of Fazbear entertainment. Children's laughter echoed off polished floors. Ice stage lights illuminated performances where the glam rock band played to packed audiences. Security measures had been upgraded significantly from the primitive systems of earlier establishments. Staff bots, humanoid machines with fixed smiles, patrolled the corridors handling tasks from cleaning to customer service. Surveillance cameras covered nearly every angle. The building locked down at night, sealing potential intruders inside or out, depending on which side of the doors they found themselves when the hour grew late. Everything seemed designed to prevent the tragedies that had become synonymous with the Fazbear name, to create an environment where the worst danger a child might face would be staying up past bedtime or eating too much pizza. But beneath this veneer of safety, and something had already gone wrong before the Pizzaplex even opened its doors to the public. The animatronics, despite their advanced programming and sophisticated behavioral subroutines, had been compromised. A digital virus, the remnant of William Afton's consciousness that had survived the fire and found new life in scanned circuit boards from earlier animatronics, had begun spreading through the system. This glitch trap entity, as it came to be known, had enlisted a human follower named Vanessa, who worked security at the facility. Through her, and through direct corruption of the animatronics base code, the virus turned these performers into hunters, machines that would stalk and attack any child who found themselves alone in the Pizzaplex after hours. All of them fell under this influence, with one critical exception. Glamrock Freddy, for reasons that remain the subject of intense speculation and debate, resisted the corruption. When he suffered a malfunction during a performance and shut down unexpectedly, something in his system reset, placing him into a safe mode that severed his connection to the network that had compromised his bandmates. This is where the story truly begins, with that single act of resistance that shouldn't have been possible, that suggests something more than programming guided Glamrock Freddy's actions. And it's where we must start examining the secrets that define both him and Roxanne Wolf. Secrets that reveal themselves slowly through dialogue, through environmental storytelling, through the way these animatronics behave when they think no one's watching, and through the connections they forge with the children who cross their paths during the darkest hours. Roxanne Wolf cuts an immediately striking figure when you first encounter her in Security Breach. She's designed as an anthropomorphic wolf with grey fur, her appearance carefully crafted to project confidence and star power. Long silver hair cascades down her back with a distinctive green streak running through the front, the kind of bold color choice you'd associate with rock stars and rebels. Her yellow eyes gleam with intensity, framed by carefully applied makeup. Black streaks running down her cheeks like war paint or the tracks of tears, and purple lipstick that completes her punk aesthetic. She wears a two-piece red outfit with black accents and star patterns, her crop top and shorts showing off the purple zebra-striped leg warmers that become one of her most recognizable features. Green claws tip her fingers, purple ones her toes, creating a mismatched color scheme that somehow works within the broader neon palette of the Pizzaplex. Multiple piercings decorate her ears, and she carries herself with the kind of swagger you'd expect from someone who knows they're supposed to be the best at everything. According to the official lore as presented in the game, Roxanne serves as the guitar player for the glam rock band, and she's also the mascot for Roxy Raceway, one of the major attractions within the Pizzaplex. This racing-themed area features go-karts that visitors can drive around a track, with Roxanne's image plastered across promotional materials and decorating the walls in vibrant murals that show her in various action poses. She's meant to embody speed, competition, the thrill of being number one. Every aspect of her design and her designated role within the Pizzaplex reinforces this image of someone who excels, who dominates their field, who doesn't just participate but wins. The developers at Steelwall Studios have mentioned in interviews that Roxanne was actually the most difficult glam rock animatronic to model, requiring extensive work to get her appearance just right, which suggests a level of care and attention to detail that went into crafting her character beyond what might be needed for a simple antagonist. She's also the second wolf animatronic in the entire Five Nights at Freddy's franchise, and the first being Twisted Wolf from the novel trilogy, though their designs and roles bear little resemblance beyond the basic species choice. Where Twisted Wolf represented something monstrous and nightmarish, Roxanne was clearly intended to be cool, attractive even, someone kids would want to emulate and adults would find impressive as a feat of engineering and design. When we first see her in the game, she's in her green room, standing before a mirror and engaging in what appears to be a pre-show ritual of self-affirmation. The dialogue here immediately establishes the surface level of her personality. She tells herself she's the best, that everyone loves her, that she's the most beautiful, that she's going to be a star. Her tone drips with confidence as she practices these mantras, psyching herself up for another performance. On first impression, you might write Roxanne off as simply narcissistic, self-absorbed, the kind of character whose vanity makes them an easy target for mockery. And the game does lean into this interpretation initially. When Gregory, the child protagonist, encounters Roxanne while trying to navigate the Pizzaplex. After hours, she taunts him mercilessly. She tells him that he has no friends, that nobody will miss him, that he's a coward for hiding from her instead of facing her directly. Her insults are cruel and oddly personal for a machine that shouldn't have any real investment in making a child feel small. She hunts him through the corridors with single-minded determination, using her keen sense of smell to track him even when he tries to hide in lockers or photo booths. At times, she asks Gregory if he thinks he's better than her, the question laced with contempt, but also something else, something that hints at the truth beneath the performance. Because what becomes clear as you spend more time observing Roxanne, and particularly if you happen to enter her green room at certain points in the game, is that her narcissism is a defense mechanism. It's armor she's constructed to protect herself from feelings of inadequacy that run much deeper than her confident facade would suggest. If you enter her room when she's not expecting company, you can catch her having a very different sort of conversation with her reflection. She's crying, her voice breaking as she calls herself a failure, as she questions why she's not good enough, as she worries that everyone can see through her and recognize that she's not actually the best at anything. She speaks to herself the same way she later speaks to Gregory, saying that nobody will love her, that nobody cares. But now it's clear these aren't taunts aimed outward. They're fears she's grappling with internally, insecurities that have somehow taken root in whatever passes for consciousness in an animatronic's programming. The most revealing moment comes if you happen to be nearby when Glamrock Freddy enters her room. Roxanne immediately shifts from vulnerable to defensive, anger flashing as she yells at him to get out, to leave her alone, her pride refusing to let even her bandmate witness her moment of weakness. It's the kind of reaction you'd expect from someone dealing with genuine emotional pain, not from a robot simply following pre-programmed behavioral loops. And this duality, this constant tension between who Roxanne presents herself as and who she seems to actually be underneath, forms the core of her character throughout Security Breach, and becomes even more significant in the Ruin DLC that follows. What causes an animatronic to develop self-esteem issues? That question sits at the center of Roxanne's mystery and opens up fascinating possibilities about the nature of consciousness, artificial or otherwise, within the Five Nights at Freddy's universe. The Glamrock animatronics are described as having advanced artificial intelligence, far beyond the relatively simple programming of earlier generations of Fazbear Entertainment's creations. They can hold conversations, respond to unexpected situations, display what appears to be genuine emotion in their voice modulation and body language. But does advanced AI naturally give rise to insecurity? Can a machine truly feel inadequate, or is something else at play here? One theory suggests that Roxanne's personality quirks are entirely artificial, deliberately programmed by the designers to give her more depth and relatability. Perhaps Fazbear Entertainment's creative team decided that a robot who only projected confidence would come across as flat or unlikable, so they added layers of vulnerability to make her more interesting as a character. The crying scenes, the self-doubt, even the aggressive overcompensation could all be carefully scripted responses meant to trigger under specific circumstances, creating the illusion of complexity without any actual internal experience. It's an unsettling thought in some ways, the idea that even Roxanne's pain is artificial, a performance without a performer behind it. But several details suggest something more genuine is happening. The way Roxanne talks to herself when she believes she's alone doesn't feel like triggered dialogue so much as actual internal monologue bleeding out into spoken words. The specific content of her worries, the fear that nobody will love her in her damaged state after Gregory takes her eyes, the way she remembers minute details about children who visited the Pizzaplex. These elements point towards something that experiences, that feels, that cares beyond what programming would require. And there's the question of where these insecurities originated if they are real. What would cause an animatronic designed to be confident to instead feel profoundly inadequate? One possibility that fans have explored involves Roxanne's position in the band. Throughout the Five Nights at Freddy's series, Foxy has been an incredibly popular character, beloved by fans for his pirate aesthetic and the tragic elements of his story across various games. In the Pizzaplex, there's no Foxy among the Glamrock band. Instead, Roxanne fills what would traditionally be the fourth slot, playing guitar in the position Foxy occupied in previous iterations. The game itself never explicitly addresses this substitution or suggests Roxanne is aware of any predecessor, and there's no dialogue where she references feeling like a replacement. The Pizzaplex appears to exist as its own entity, not directly tied to these older character dynamics. However, from a design perspective, players immediately recognized that Roxanne occupied what had been Foxy's traditional place in the band lineup, leading to interpretations about her character that may add layers to understanding her insecurity. Some fans have theorized that if the animatronics possessed any awareness of the franchise's history, perhaps through data remnants or spiritual connections to the site's past, Roxanne's constant need to prove she's the best could reflect uncertainty about filling a role that once belonged to someone else. This interpretation isn't confirmed by the game, but it offers one lens through which to view her desperate affirmations. Whether she's consciously competing with a legacy or simply struggling with self-worth for other reasons, her behavior suggests someone who feels they need to constantly justify their place, to prove they deserve to be where they are. This interpretation gains additional weight when you consider the physical manifestations of her insecurity. Roxanne spends significant time in front of mirrors, not just in her green room, but throughout the pizzaplex, wherever reflective surfaces allow her to check her appearance. She speaks often about being beautiful, about looking perfect, fixating on her physical form in a way that suggests deep-seated worry about how she's perceived. According to official information, she even has a beauty salon, Roxy's Salon, where players in Help Wanted too must apply makeup to her according to specific instructions, while she grows increasingly impatient if not attended to quickly enough. This vanity reads differently when you understand it's not about actual narcissism, but about desperately trying to maintain a perfect exterior because she believes that's the only thing that gives her value. The keytar itself becomes symbolically significant through this lens. It's a somewhat unconventional instrument, often associated with the 1980s, but sometimes viewed as gimmicky or less serious than traditional guitars or keyboards. For Roxanne to play keytar while worrying about being the best, while feeling inadequate, while occupying what fans recognize as Foxy's traditional role, creates this painful irony where even her instrument might feel like a concession, a compromise, something that marks her as different but not necessarily special in a positive way. And then there's the way she treats others, particularly Gregory. The cruelty of her taunts, telling a child that he has no friends and nobody will miss him, seems designed to wound in very specific ways. But these are exactly the kinds of things Roxanne worries about regarding herself. It's projection in the psychological sense, attacking others for the perceived weaknesses that terrify her about her own situation. When she asks Gregory if he thinks he's better than her, she's really asking if everyone thinks they're better than her, if she's fooling anyone with her confidence, if the act she puts on is transparent to all who encounter her. She's mean because she's hurting, lashing out because it feels safer than being vulnerable, performing cruelty because it's easier than admitting fear. This psychological complexity in an animatronic character is remarkable and raises profound questions about what exactly Roxanne is. The game never provides a definitive answer to whether her distress represents genuine emotional experience or extraordinarily sophisticated programming designed to simulate such experiences. If she's operating purely as a robot, albeit one with highly advanced AI, then her programming is sophisticated enough to create the appearance of genuine neurosis and emotional damage, complete with internal contradictions and defense mechanisms that mirror human psychological patterns. If there's something more to her existence, whether that's a spark of emergent consciousness arising from her complex systems, or even a human soul somehow connected to her, then her pain becomes even more tragic because it would be real suffering, not simulated distress. The game deliberately leaves this ambiguous, allowing players to draw their own conclusions based on how they interpret her behavior, her dialogue, and the philosophical question of whether sufficiently advanced artificial intelligence becomes indistinguishable from consciousness. What we can say with certainty is that Roxanne's character represents a departure from simpler antagonist animatronics in earlier games. She's not just a machine that attacks the player, because that's what the game requires. She's a character with depth, with contradictions, with an inner life that makes her sympathetic, even when she's actively trying to harm Gregory. And this depth makes what happens to her during security breach and its aftermath all the more devastating and significant to understanding her complete arc. The moment that changes everything for Roxanne comes roughly midway through security breach, when Gregory must navigate Roxy Raceway to progress in his quest to escape the Pizzaplex. The area is one of the most elaborate attractions in the building, featuring a multi-level racetrack where visitors can drive go-karts during normal operating hours. Promotional materials show Roxanne in her element here. Posters depicting her in racing gear with slogans about winning and being the fastest. The space itself is dim and atmospheric after hours, lit by the glow of neon signs and arcade machines, shadows pooling in corners where maintenance equipment sits unused. Gregory's objective involves repairing a driver assist staff bot, one of the many humanoid machines that handle various tasks throughout the Pizzaplex, and using it to operate a go-kart in a way that will help him obtain a specific upgrade. Roxanne, of course, patrols this area, her territory, hunting for the child who's been evading the animatronics all night. The game gives players a few different approaches to dealing with her, but the canonical path, the one most players experience and the one that has the most significant story implications, involves luring Roxanne into a specific position and then deliberately crashing a go-kart into her at high speed. The impact is devastating. Roxanne is struck with enough force to completely shatter her exterior casing, her body crumpling as metal buckles and synthetic materials tear away to reveal the endoskeleton underneath. Her face takes the worst of it, the front of her head caving in to create a jagged hole where her eyes once sat, exposing sparking wires and damaged circuits. Her hair becomes matted with oil and debris. Chunks of her outer shell break off, leaving her arms and legs cracked and partially exposed. Her tail nearly severs, hanging by a few internal cables. She's functionally disabled by the collision, no longer a threat in the traditional sense. But she doesn't shut down. This is where Roxanne's story takes a turn from tragic to genuinely heartbreaking. Despite the catastrophic damage to her body, despite losing her eyes and much of her facial structure, she remains conscious and active, and what she does next reveals depths to her character that earlier encounters only hinted at. She begins patrolling again, but now she's blind, relying on sound to hunt for Gregory. Her movements become more desperate, more erratic, and she's crying, actually audibly crying. Her voice, which before carried that confident, aggressive edge even when she was insulting Gregory, now breaks with genuine distress. She sobs as she wanders through Roxy Raceway, lamenting what's happened to her. Her dialogue during this sequence is absolutely gutting if you stop to actually listen to it. She worries aloud that nobody will love her now. Not when she looks like this, not when she's broken and mangled. She questions why Gregory is hiding from her, the question almost plaintive, as if she can't understand why someone wouldn't want to be near her. She talks about how she was supposed to be beautiful, how that was important, how that was what gave her value. The vanity that seemed like a character flaw before is revealed as vulnerability, and now that the physical appearance she clung to has been quite literally destroyed, she's left grappling with the belief that she has nothing left. she continues to hunt Gregory. Yes, still dangerous in her way, but now it reads less like malice and more like the desperate thrashing of someone who's lost everything and doesn't know what else to do but keep going through the motions. Gregory, following Freddy's guidance, then does something that compounds the violation. He approaches Roxanne's damaged form and removes her eyes from the wreckage of her face. These aren't just any components. Throughout the game, it's been established that Roxanne has special eyes with unique properties, enhanced optics that allow her to see through walls and track movement in ways the other animatronics can't. It's her signature ability, the thing that makes her special beyond just her role in the band. And now those eyes are taken from her, extracted from what remains of her head, so they can be installed in Glamrock Freddy, giving him the enhanced vision that will help Gregory navigate through the later stages of the game. From a gameplay perspective, it's a practical upgrade, a necessary step in progression. From a story perspective, it's the removal of the last thing that made Roxanne feel valuable, the final insult to someone who's already been brought to the lowest point imaginable. For the remainder of Security Breach, Roxanne exists in this shattered state. Players encounter her occasionally, still wandering blindly, still sobbing, still expressing fears about being unlovable and broken. She's no longer a significant threat because she can't see to chase effectively, but her presence lingers as a reminder of what Gregory has done to survive, the casualties created by his desperate bid for freedom. Some players felt genuine guilt encountering her like this, unsure if the game wanted them to see her as just another obstacle or as something more tragic. The fact that Roxanne continues to function at all in this state, continues to feel and express distress rather than simply shutting down, reinforces the idea that something genuine exists within her programming or spirit, something capable of suffering. And then we need to talk about what happens when Glamrock Freddy enters the picture, specifically the moment when he, upgraded with Roxanne's eyes, encounters her in her destroyed state. If players bring Freddy into Roxy Raceway after the crash, Roxanne can't detect him with her usual methods since her eyes are gone. But something happens that's both fascinating and deeply sad. She doesn't attack Freddy like she attacks Gregory when she catches his scent. There's a moment of recognition, or perhaps confusion, as if she senses something familiar but can't quite place it. Some players have reported dialogue where she seems almost relieved to encounter Freddy, asking for help or simply standing down in a way she doesn't for Gregory. It suggests that despite everything, despite the corruption affecting the other animatronics, and despite her own suffering, Roxanne still recognizes her bandmate on some level and doesn't see him as a threat or a target. This becomes even more significant when you consider unused voice lines discovered in the game's files. These cut pieces of dialogue were never implemented in the final release, but offer fascinating glimpses into story directions the developers considered. Some of these lines have Roxanne speaking to Freddy in ways that sound almost friendly, as if they're having actual conversations rather than just programmed exchanges. Others suggest she was meant to question why Freddy is helping Gregory, perhaps confused about why her leader would side with the child all the animatronics have been ordered to capture. The decision to cut these interactions might have been for pacing or gameplay reasons, but their existence in the code implies that the developers were thinking about the relationships between the glam rock band members and how those dynamics would shift under the crisis scenario of Security Breach's events. Roxanne's eyes themselves deserve closer examination as a plot element. The game establishes early on that she has these enhanced optics, showing her using the ability to track Gregory through walls during her pursuit sequences. When Freddy receives these eyes as an upgrade, they function exactly the same way, allowing Gregory to activate a vision mode while inside Freddy's chest cavity that highlights important items and characters through solid surfaces. But there's something symbolic about this exchange beyond the mechanical functionality. Eyes in storytelling often represent perception, truth, the ability to truly see things as they are. Roxanne, who was so focused on surface appearances and how she looked to others, had the ability to see deeper than anyone else. And she loses this ability, becoming literally blind just as her emotional vulnerabilities become impossible to hide. Meanwhile, Freddy, who we'll explore in much greater depth soon, gains the ability to see through obstacles and barriers at the exact moment he's guiding Gregory through the Pizzaplex's deepest mysteries and darkest secrets. The physical violation of taking Roxanne's eyes also carries disturbing implications when you consider the history of Five Nights at Freddy's. Throughout the series, the removal or destruction of animatronics has often had spiritual consequences, particularly when those machines housed or were connected to human souls. The animatronics in earlier games would be destroyed by technicians or security guards, only for their spirits to manifest in different forms or locations, the act of dismantling their physical bodies not enough to free them from whatever bound them to this existence. Roxanne isn't confirmed to be possessed in the traditional sense, but if there's any spark of consciousness or soul within her, the removal of her eyes represents a profound trauma, a kind of bodily violation that goes beyond simple mechanical damage. It's the taking of something integral to her identity and sense of self, and she has to continue existing without it, aware of what's been lost. And some players have noted that Roxanne's treatment by the player character makes her one of the most sympathetic antagonists in Security Breach. Despite her cruel behavior earlier in the game, Gregory is positioned as the protagonist, the one we're meant to root for. But his survival requires devastating Roxanne in ways that feel almost excessive. Couldn't he have simply escaped without destroying her so thoroughly? Did he need to take her eyes? Or was there another path to obtaining the upgrades Freddy required? The game doesn't offer alternatives, making these actions feel inevitable. But the fact that players questioned whether they wanted to hurt Roxanne this badly speaks to how effectively her character was crafted. She became more than just an obstacle. She became someone whose suffering mattered, whose pain registered as real even though she's technically just a machine programmed to attack the player. The question of whether Roxanne's anguish is authentic becomes impossible to answer definitively, but what matters from a narrative perspective is that it feels authentic. Her voice actor, Marta Svetek, delivers her lines with genuine emotion, particularly in the post-crash sequences where Roxanne is sobbing and lamenting her condition. The animation work shows her movements becoming more frantic and aimless as she searches blindly through Roxy Raceway. The environmental storytelling reinforces her tragedy, with mirrors that once reflected her confident image now showing nothing but empty space as she passes by them without sight. Whether there's a ghost in this machine or just incredibly sophisticated programming, and the story treats her suffering as meaningful and expects players to have an emotional response to it beyond simple satisfaction at having overcome a challenging enemy. And this is where Roxanne exists at the end of Security Breach's main campaign. Broken, blind, wandering through the ruins of what had been her domain, still crying, still expressing fears that she's worthless now that her appearance has been destroyed. For many players, this would be the last they saw of her, the image that would define her character. a tragic figure who projected strength to hide weakness and paid a terrible price for standing between a child and his escape. But Roxanne's story doesn't end there. In fact, the most important revelations about who she is and what she's capable of becoming only emerge in the downloadable content that follows, and where she's given the opportunity to prove that her worth never had anything to do with her appearance or her abilities, and everything to do with the capacity for genuine connection that existed within her all along. Before we dive deeper into Roxanne's redemption arc in the Ruin DLC, we need to shift our focus to Glamrock Freddy, the other half of this exploration into the Pizzaplex's deepest character mysteries. Because while Roxanne's secrets lie in her vulnerability and her struggle with self-worth, Freddy's mysteries are even more profound, touching on questions of identity, possession, and whether the soul of a dead man might inhabit the shell of a bear designed to entertain children. Understanding Glamrock Freddy requires examining both what we see on screen and what lies beneath the surface, and the theories that have captivated the Five Nights at Freddy's community since Security Breach's release and continue to spark debate about the nature of consciousness within this universe. On the surface, Glamrock Freddy appears to be exactly what he's advertised as: the leader of the Glamrock band, the face of Freddy Fazbear's mega Pizzaplex, a friendly and reliable entertainer designed to make children happy during their visits. His appearance reflects this role perfectly. He's designed as a bright orange bear, though some might argue the coloring leans more toward yellow in certain lighting, giving him a more lion-like appearance than traditional Freddy designs. He wears the iconic top hat, now adorned with a blue stripe, and sports a black bow tie across his chest. Blue and red face paint creates a rock star aesthetic, with a lightning bolt design across his torso reinforcing the glam rock theme. He has red shoulder pads, spiked bracelets on both wrists, and red leg warmers that mirror the style of the other band members. His overall design projects energy, friendliness, the kind of character you'd trust to keep your kids entertained at a birthday party. But what immediately sets Glamrock Freddy apart from every other animatronic in the Pizzaplex, and indeed from most animatronics throughout the entire Five Nights at Freddy's franchise, is his behavior and personality. Where the other Glamrock band members have been corrupted by the glitch trap virus, turned into hunters who stalk Gregory through the building's corridors with murderous intent, Freddy actively protects the child, not as a glitch, not as a malfunction that can be easily explained away, but as a deliberate, sustained choice that defines his entire role in the game's story. From the moment Gregory is discovered hiding in Freddy's chest cavity during the opening sequences, the bear commits himself to keeping this child safe, to helping him navigate the dangers of the Pizzaplex, to finding a way to get him out of the building before dawn, when the doors will finally unlock. This protective instinct manifests in every interaction, every piece of dialogue, every choice Freddy makes throughout the harrowing night. He speaks to Gregory with genuine concern that goes far beyond what would be expected from an entertainment animatronic, following customer service protocols. When things go wrong, when Gregory is forced into dangerous situations to progress toward freedom, Freddy apologizes profusely, his voice carrying what can only be described as guilt, as if he personally failed in his duty of care. He offers reassurance when things look darkest, his tone deliberately calm and steady, even when the circumstances would justify panic. He expresses worry about the child's physical well-being, asking if Gregory is hurt, if he needs to rest, if he's frightened, questions that reveal an emotional investment that shouldn't exist in a machine designed simply to entertain. Freddy is polite almost to a fault, saying sorry even when he hasn't done anything wrong, even when the danger stems from factors entirely outside his control. It's as if the mere fact that Gregory is in danger while under his care constitutes a personal failing, a moral responsibility he's taken upon himself without being asked or programmed to do so. This constant apologizing, this taking of responsibility for circumstances he didn't create, speaks to someone carrying the weight of past failures, someone who knows what it feels like to let people down and is desperate not to repeat those mistakes. Whether that someone is Michael Afton's literal soul, or simply an AI that's developed something resembling a conscience, the behavior pattern remains consistent and telling. He's confused by the situation they find themselves in, frequently acknowledging that he doesn't understand why his friends, his bandmates, the other glam rock animatronics have become hostile. He questions their behavior in ways that suggest he remembers how they used to act, that he has baseline expectations for their personalities and conduct that are being violated by their current hunting and attacking, and when he refers to them by name, there's familiarity and affection in his voice, particularly when he mentions Bonnie or expresses hope that whatever is wrong with the others can be fixed. He doesn't understand why he feels compelled to help Gregory despite protocols that should make him immediately report the child's presence to security, despite the fact that every rule and directive in his systems should prioritize returning Gregory to authorized personnel rather than actively helping him evade capture. When Gregory, confused and frightened by this animatronic, who seems genuinely interested in his welfare, asks the obvious question of why Freddy is helping him, the bear's response is remarkable in its honesty and vulnerability. I don't know. 3 simple words that carry profound implications are not because I'm programmed to protect children, not because that's my function, not any of the explanations you'd expect from a machine following directives. Instead, Freddy admits ignorance about his own motivations, acknowledges that something is driving his actions that he himself doesn't fully understand. It's not programming telling him what to do, or at least not programming he's consciously aware of. It's something deeper, something that feels like instinct or moral imperative, or the kind of drive that comes from the soul rather than from code. This admission of not knowing why he helps while continuing to help anyway is perhaps the most human thing about Glamrock Freddy. Humans frequently act on impulses and feelings they can't fully articulate, guided by moral intuitions that defy simple logical explanation. We help people because it feels right, because something in us recognizes that it's what should be done, even when we can't provide a rational justification that would satisfy a purely logical analysis. Freddy's "I don't know" places him firmly in this realm of moral action, guided by something beyond calculation, beyond simple cause and effect programming. He helps because he must, because the alternative is unthinkable, because everything in whatever passes for his core being tells him this is the right choice, even if he can't explain why. The implications of this behavior compound when you consider the broader context of Security Breach's story. Vanessa, the human security guard, who should be the one protecting Gregory, has been corrupted by Glitchtrap and actively hunts the child through the building. The other animatronics, and despite being sophisticated machines with advanced AI, have all fallen prey to the same virus and become threats. The building's automated systems, the staff bots and security measures all work against Gregory's survival. In this environment where every authority figure and protective system has failed or turned hostile, the one being who chooses to help is the entertainment animatronic who shouldn't have the capacity for moral choice at all. It's a damning commentary on how easily corruption spreads through technological and institutional systems, how quickly protective structures can be turned into oppressive ones, and how genuine goodness, when it emerges, often comes from the most unexpected sources. Freddy's protection of Gregory isn't passive or limited to simple advice. Throughout Security Breach, he actively puts himself at risk, willingly enters dangerous situations, and makes sacrifices to keep the child safe. He allows Gregory to use his chest cavity as a hiding place, despite acknowledging that it wasn't designed for this purpose, and the experience is uncomfortable for both of them. He goes without charging his battery to dangerous levels, risking his own shutdown, so that Gregory can have safe moments to rest or plan, without needing to move Freddy to a charging station that might be far from their current location. He confronts Vanessa directly on Gregory's behalf, standing between the corrupted security guard and the child, even though Freddy has no weapons, no real means of defending against an armed human if she chose to use force. He agrees to be upgraded with parts from his destroyed bandmates, a process that clearly causes him distress, because those upgrades give Gregory better chances of survival, even as they require Freddy to participate in what amounts to the dismemberment of his friends. Throughout Security Breach, Freddy serves as Gregory's primary means of safely traversing the Pizzaplex. Players can hide inside his chest cavity, using the animatronic's presence to bypass security measures and other threats that would otherwise detect Gregory instantly. Freddy can be summoned to specific charging stations throughout the building, providing safe havens where Gregory can plan his next move. The bear offers guidance and advice, his knowledge of the Pizzaplex's layout, helping Gregory navigate toward objectives and away from danger. He expresses distress when his bandmates are destroyed or damaged to obtain their parts for upgrades, uncomfortable with the necessity of cannibalizing his friends, even though he understands that it might be needed for survival. He has genuine relationships with the other animatronics, or at least the memory of such relationships, asking about them by name and expressing hope that whatever is causing their hostile behavior can be fixed once morning comes. This personality, warm and nurturing and fundamentally kind, would be remarkable enough on its own, a pleasant anomaly in a building filled with hostile machines. But what elevates Glamrock Freddy from simply being an unusually helpful animatronic to something truly mysterious, something that demands deeper investigation and analysis, is the question of why he's like this. What makes him different? What protective force or conscious choice shields him from the corruption that claimed every other animatronic in the Pizzaplex? Why does he, alone among his peers, resist the call to harm? These questions sit at the center of his character and drive much of the theorizing and debate within the Five Nights at Freddy's community. The game offers a surface-level explanation that seems clean and logical at first glance. During the performance at the beginning of Security Breach, Freddy suffers a malfunction on stage and collapses mid-show. The incident is sudden and dramatic. One moment he's entertaining a crowd, moving through practiced choreography alongside his bandmates, and the next he's stumbling, his systems failing, his body going rigid before crumpling to the stage floor. The show stops. The lights come up. Confusion ripples through the audience as staff rush to attend to the fallen bear. He's taken to his green room in Rockstar Row and placed into maintenance mode for diagnostics. When he comes back online, rebooted and supposedly repaired, he's in safe mode, a reduced operational state that has disconnected him from the main network where the glitch trap virus has corrupted the other animatronics. It's a technical answer that satisfies the immediate question. Freddy helps Gregory because he's not infected with the malicious code that would make him want to hurt Gregory. His kindness is just his original programming, functioning as intended without hostile interference. His protective nature represents what all the glamrock animatronics would be like if the virus hadn't twisted their directives into something predatory. This explanation is convenient, providing a clear cause and effect relationship that doesn't require invoking supernatural elements or complex theories about consciousness and possession. It allows the story to function without demanding that players accept premises about ghosts or souls, keeping things in the realm of technology and malware and system failures. But this explanation, while convenient and superficially logical, doesn't fully satisfy when you dig deeper into what safe mode actually means for an animatronic's capabilities and behavior. Think about what safe mode represents in normal computing contexts. It's a diagnostic state, a reduced functionality mode that loads only essential drivers and processes, disabling advanced features to isolate problems or allow repairs. If anything, you'd expect safe mode to make Freddy simpler, more mechanical in his responses, less capable of the nuanced emotional reactions he displays throughout Security Breach. A machine operating in safe mode shouldn't have more personality, more apparent emotional depth, more complex decision-making capability than one running at full capacity. Yet Freddy seems more human while in this supposedly limited state than any other animatronic in the building, more capable of genuine care and concern than beings that are operating with full access to their sophisticated AI systems. He makes complex ethical choices, weighs competing priorities, expresses doubts and questions about his own motivations and the situation unfolding around him. He adapts to unexpected circumstances with creativity and flexibility that go beyond what reduced functionality should allow. If safe mode is truly limiting his capabilities, then what does that say about what he'd be like at full capacity? Would he be even more human, even more capable of complex thought and feeling? Or is something else happening here? Something the safe mode explanation doesn't fully capture. And there's the question of the malfunction itself, the event that triggered his entry into safe mode. What caused Freddy to collapse during the performance? The game never provides a clear answer to this crucial question, leaving players to wonder if something deeper was happening in that moment beyond simple mechanical failure. Animatronics in the Five Nights at Freddy's universe don't typically fail without reason, and when they do fail, it's usually because of external factors like damage, interference, or spiritual possession affecting their systems. For Freddy to suddenly collapse in the middle of a routine performance, with no apparent warning or precipitating event, suggests something significant occurred that the game isn't explicitly spelling out. What follows are interpretations that fans have developed to explain this mystery, none of them confirmed, but all of them offering interesting lenses through which to view the event. Some theories propose that the malfunction was actually the moment of possession, that Michael Afton's soul, having been lingering in the ruins beneath the Pizzaplex since the Pizzeria Simulator fire, chose this moment to inhabit Freddy's body and claim it as his new vessel. Under this interpretation, the collapse would represent the transition, the shock to Freddy's systems as consciousness entered, where only programming existed before. The safe mode that follows would then be less about disconnecting from a network and more about the animatronic's basic systems rebooting to accommodate this new presence, integrating a soul with machinery in a way that requires fundamental recalibration of how the machine functions. This reading frames Freddy's enhanced humanity in safe mode not as a limitation, but as an expansion, the addition of genuine consciousness to artificial intelligence creating something greater than the sum of its parts. Other interpretations suggest the malfunction was Freddy fighting against the initial corruption attempt, and that Glitchtrap's virus tried to claim him like it claimed the others, but something in Freddy's programming or nature resisted, causing a system conflict that manifested as physical collapse. The safe mode that followed would then be Freddy's systems protecting themselves, isolating from the network, not because of technician intervention, but because Freddy himself, on some level, recognized the threat and severed the connection before full corruption could take hold. This would require a level of self-awareness and survival instinct that goes beyond what most people assume animatronics possess, suggesting consciousness, or at least sophisticated protective programming that can make decisions about its own preservation. A third possibility combines elements of both theories. Michael Afton's soul inhabits Freddy, but the initial possession happened earlier, perhaps when the animatronic was first activated, or when it was being constructed on top of the old pizzeria simulator ruins. Under this interpretation, the malfunction during the show would represent Michael becoming aware of the Glitchtrap virus spreading through the building, recognizing the same patterns of corruption and control that his father, William Afton, had used throughout his murderous career. The collapse would be Michael deliberately shutting down the connections that would allow the virus to claim him, sacrificing full functionality to maintain moral autonomy, choosing limited capability over corrupted power. This frames the malfunction not as failure, but as deliberate choice, as resistance, and as the first of many decisions Michael as Freddy will make throughout Security Breach to prioritize protecting children over following directives that would harm them. Regardless of which interpretation resonates most, the fact that the game offers no definitive explanation for the malfunction leaves space for all these readings and more. The ambiguity is likely intentional, allowing players to engage with the mystery actively rather than passively accepting a given answer. It respects the audience's intelligence and investment in the lore, trusting them to examine the evidence, consider the possibilities, and form their own conclusions about what really happened when Freddy fell on that stage, and what it means for understanding who or what he truly is. And this brings us to one of the most prevalent and fascinating theories in the Security Breach community, debated extensively since the game's release. The idea that Glamrock Freddy might be possessed by the soul of Michael Afton, the protagonist of several previous Five Nights at Freddy's games, and the son of series antagonist William Afton. It's important to note up front that this remains firmly in the realm of fan theory. The developers have never officially confirmed this connection, and the evidence supporting it requires interpretive leaps and reading between lines of dialogue rather than following explicit statements. Yet the theory has gained significant traction among players and lore enthusiasts because it adds profound emotional weight to Security Breach's narrative and provides thematic connections to the broader franchise story. To understand this theory and evaluate its evidence, we need to briefly recap Michael's story as established in earlier games. Michael Afton was the older brother responsible for the bite of 83, the incident where his younger brother's head was crushed in the jaws of the Fredbear animatronic during a cruel prank. Racked with guilt over this tragedy, Michael spent subsequent years trying to undo the damage caused by his family, particularly his father William, who had become a serial killer targeting children at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza locations. Michael worked as a security guard at multiple establishments. I survived being scooped by the animatronics in the sister location, where his body was used as a disguise by the amalgamation known as an ARD, and ultimately survived as something not quite human anymore sustained by remnant, the supernatural substance that binds souls to metal. In Pizzeria Simulator, Michael was present during the fire that Henry Emily orchestrated to end the cycle of possession and murder, presumably dying alongside the spirits that were being freed, and his undead father, William. The theory that Michael's soul survived that fire and found its way into Glamrock Freddy rests on several pieces of evidence, some more compelling than others. First, there's the simple fact of the Mega Pizzaplex's location. The building is constructed directly on top of the ruins of Pizzeria Simulator's establishment. Meaning Freddy's physical form exists right above where Michael Afton died. In the 5 Nights at Freddy's universe, proximity to death sites matters. Souls don't always move on cleanly. They linger. They attach to new vessels. They find ways to persist beyond their physical demise. If Michael's spirit was looking for a new body, for a way to continue his mission of protecting children from the threats his family created, an animatronic built literally on top of his grave would be a logical choice. Second, there's Glamrock Freddy's protective behavior toward Gregory specifically. Multiple fans have noted that Gregory bears a striking resemblance to Michael's younger brother, the crying child from 5 Nights at Freddy's 4. Same general appearance, similar clothing style, in the kind of visual parallel that feels deliberate rather than coincidental. If Freddy is Michael, then his overwhelming need to protect Gregory makes perfect sense as a form of redemption. He failed to protect his younger brother all those years ago, accidentally causing the child's death through a prank gone horrifically wrong. Now, presented with another vulnerable child who reminds him of that brother, who's in danger in a place filled with hostile machines, he has the opportunity to do what he couldn't do before. Actually keep someone safe, actually prevent tragedy instead of causing it. His frequent apologies, his self-blame when things go wrong, his inability to explain why he feels so strongly about helping Gregory. All of these traits align with someone carrying profound guilt and desperately seeking a chance at redemption. Third, there are specific lines of dialogue that take on new meaning if interpreted through the lens of Michael Afton's consciousness. During the burn trap ending, one of Security Breach's multiple conclusion sequences, Freddy and Gregory descend into the ruins beneath the Pizzaplex, into the burned remnants of Pizzeria Simulator's location. As they approach this area, Freddy says something chilling. "I know what this is. I have been here before. She brought me here. I found myself for the first time when I cleared the path. I did not want to, but I had no choice. Now I have a choice. I have changed. My friends are here. They are so angry, confused, but I can protect you." This dialogue strongly implies that Freddy has memories of being in this location before, of events that occurred in this place, of being influenced by someone who brought him here. If Freddy is just an animatronic built after the location was sealed, how would he have been here before? But if he's Michael, then these words make perfect sense. He was here during the fire, brought here by Henry Emily's plan. He found himself, found purpose, when he participated in Henry's final solution. His friends, the spirits of the children his father murdered, who were present during the fire, are still here in some form, still angry and confused by their extended existence. And now, finally, Michael has a choice. He chose to help Gregory. He chose to protect rather than harm. He's changed from the bully who caused his brother's death into someone who saves children. Fourth, there's the technical question of how Freddy resisted the corruption that affected the other animatronics. The safe mode explanation feels insufficient when you consider that even in safe mode, Freddy would still be connected to the same base systems as the other Glamrocks. He should still be vulnerable to the same digital infection that turned them into hunters, unless something else is protecting him. If Michael's soul inhabits Freddy, that spiritual presence might serve as a kind of firewall, preventing Glitchtrap's code from fully taking root, because there's already consciousness present that can resist, that has experience fighting against William Afton's influence from beyond the grave. It's not just programming protecting Gregory, it's Michael's will, his determination to not let his father claim another victim, manifesting through the machine he now inhabits. Fifth, there are unused voice lines in the game's files that strengthen this theory considerably, though it's crucial to note these are cut content that never made it into the final release. One discovered line has Freddy saying to Gregory, "You are broken, I will put you back together." These exact words echo a famous line from Five Nights at Freddy's 4, spoken to the crying child by the Fredbear plush after the bite of 83. If this dialogue had remained in the game and Freddy is Michael, it would have been an incredibly powerful moment of closure, a chance to finally fulfill the promise that couldn't be kept all those years ago. Another unused line has Freddy calling Gregory broken and saying he remembers him, that Gregory isn't in the customer database for a reason, and this could have implied that Gregory himself isn't entirely human, perhaps a robotic recreation of the crying child created by William Afton in his grief, which would make the connection between Michael as Freddy and Gregory even more poignant. These lines were ultimately cut from the final game, which could mean the developers considered these connections, but decided against making them explicit, or that they're saving these revelations for future content. Their existence in the development files suggests the story team was actively exploring these ideas, even if they chose not to implement them in the released version. The theory isn't without holes and criticisms. Some players argue that attributing Freddy's kindness to possession undermines the idea that an artificial intelligence could simply be good on its own merits, and that making him Michael turns what could be a story about machine consciousness developing genuine compassion into yet another possession narrative. Others point out that the evidence is largely circumstantial, requiring players to make interpretive leaps rather than following explicit confirmation in the text. The developers have never directly confirmed that Glamrock Freddy is Michael Afton, leaving it in the realm of fan theory rather than established canon. And some of the most compelling evidence comes from unused content that was deliberately cut, which could mean the development team considered the idea but ultimately decided against it. Yet the theory persists and continues to gain adherence because it enhances the emotional weight of Security Breach's story significantly. Without it, Freddy is an anomaly, a helpful animatronic in a game series known for hostile machines. With it, he becomes a tragic figure seeking redemption, a brother trying to right past wrongs, a son fighting against his father's evil legacy one more time. The relationship between Freddy and Gregory transforms from a simple alliance of convenience into something deeply meaningful, a chance for healing wounds that have been open for decades, and it provides a thematic through line connecting Security Breach to the broader Five Nights at Freddy's narrative, showing that the consequences of the Afton family's actions continue to ripple through time, affecting even this new generation of characters and conflicts. What we can say definitively is that Glamrock Freddy is an exception to every rule about how animatronics behave in the Pizzaplex, in that his capacity for kindness and protection seems to stem from something deeper than standard programming, that his dialogue contains suggestive hints about past experiences and connections that shouldn't exist if he's just a machine built for this specific location. Whether that something is Michael Afton's literal soul, or simply represents a fictional exploration of artificial consciousness developing ethical behavior, Freddy stands as one of the most compelling characters in Security Breach, precisely because of the mysteries surrounding his nature and motivations. And these mysteries become even more complex when we examine his relationships with the other animatronics, particularly Glamrock Bonnie, whose fate represents another tragic thread in the Pizzaplex's tangled narrative and provides additional context for understanding who Freddy is and what drives him. Glamrock Bonnie never appears on screen during Security Breach, except as images in posters, cutouts in decorations, and references in dialogue. Yet his absence haunts the game, particularly in how it affects Glamrock Freddy's emotional state. To understand this relationship and its significance, we need to piece together details scattered throughout Security Breach and the Ruin DLC, environmental storytelling that reveals what happened to Bonnie and why it matters so much to Freddy. During Security Breach, players exploring the Pizzaplex will eventually discover Bonnie Bowl, an entire section of the building dedicated to bowling, complete with lanes, arcade games, and decorations featuring the Blue Rabbit, who served as one of the original Glamrock band members. The area has been rebranded at some point, removing most of Bonnie's imagery and replacing it with more generic theming, but traces of his presence remain. When you reach Glamrock Freddy's green room in Rockstar Row, the private space where the bear recharges between performances, you find something remarkable. A poster on the wall showing Glamrock Bonnie with a message written across it that reads, "You and me forever and ever. Love, Freddy." The poster is signed, personalized, suggesting a deep emotional connection between the bear and the rabbit, a relationship that went beyond simple bandmate status into something more meaningful, possibly friendship, possibly something even deeper depending on how you interpret the message. If you bring Glamrock Freddy to Bonnie Bowl during gameplay, something telling happens. Freddy refuses to go inside, expressing that he doesn't want to visit this area because it reminds him too much of Bonnie, because the memories are too painful. His voice carries genuine sadness, a sense of loss that extends beyond missing a co-worker. He grieves for Bonnie in a way that suggests their bond was profound, that whatever happened to the rabbit left a wound that hasn't healed. Some players have interpreted this as evidence of a romantic relationship, pointing to the forever and ever message and the depth of Freddy's sorrow as indicating love rather than friendship. Others see it as an extremely close platonic bond, the kind of friendship that defines someone's life. Either way, it's clear that Bonnie mattered to Freddy tremendously, and that his loss affected the bear in ways that persist even in the midst of Security Breach's crisis. So what happened to Glamrock Bonnie? The game provides hints, but no definitive answer, leaving players to construct the story from fragments scattered throughout the Pizzaplex. Montgomery Gator, the aggressive alligator who plays bass guitar, occupies what was once Bonnie's position in the band. Monty wears Bonnie's star-shaped sunglasses and plays what appears to be Bonnie's instrument, suggesting he inherited these items when he took over the role. In Monty's Gator Golf, one of the Pizzaplex's attractions, there's a ride that depicts a story through cardboard cutouts. Bonnie passing his guitar to Monty and leaving the band, presented as if it were a voluntary retirement, and the rabbit graciously stepping aside so the alligator could have his moment in the spotlight. But everything about this narrative rings false. Feels like corporate spin, designed to explain away something more sinister. Messages scattered throughout the Pizzaplex refer to Bonnie going to Monty's Gator Golf and never returning. Security logs mention that the rabbit was last seen in that area before he disappeared, suggesting something happened there that resulted in his decommissioning. And then, in the ruined DLC, players finally discover Glamrock Bonnie's fate. Behind a hidden door in Bonnie Bowl, accessible only by deactivating specific staff bots that seem to be guarding the entrance, Bonnie's shattered remains lie broken and forgotten. His body has been torn apart with extreme violence, his torso completely separated from his pelvis, and both legs destroyed, his chest cavity ripped open to expose the endoskeleton beneath. He's surrounded by broken bowling balls and other debris, suggesting a violent confrontation occurred in this space. His body wasn't taken for proper decommissioning or repair. It was hidden, stuffed in this back room and left to deteriorate, evidence of something Fazbear Entertainment wanted to conceal. The most widespread theory among fans, supported by the circumstantial evidence throughout the games, suggests that Montgomery Gator destroyed Glamrock Bonnie, possibly in a fit of jealousy or rage. This interpretation draws from Monty's characterization throughout Security Breach as violent and destructive, smashing property and exhibiting behavior that goes beyond the corruption affecting the other animatronics to suggest genuine anger management issues built into his personality or exacerbated by his circumstances. From this perspective, Monty wanted to be the star, wanted to be on the main stage rather than relegated to his golf course attraction. Bonnie stood between him and that position. The theory proposes that Monty took matters into his own clawed hands, destroyed his competition, and claimed the spot he believed he deserved. It's compelling as a narrative, explaining both Bonnie's violent end and Monty's subsequent rise to prominence, but it remains speculation based on connecting suggestive details rather than explicit confirmation. However, there are complications to this straightforward reading that have led to alternative theories. When players deactivate the staff bots surrounding Bonnie's body in ruin, his eyes stop glowing, suggesting he was still partially active, still being powered or monitored by these machines. Some theories propose that the staff bots weren't guarding against people finding the body, but rather containing something dangerous about Bonnie himself, keeping him trapped in this room because he posed some kind of threat. Other theories suggest Vanny, the human follower of Glitchtrap, might have been responsible for Bonnie's destruction, using him for parts to construct Burntrap, William Afton's latest physical form found in the underground sections of the Pizzaplex, and this would explain why Bonnie's body is so thoroughly destroyed and why it was hidden rather than processed through normal channels. Vanny needed to cover her tracks while she built her master a new body from stolen animatronic components. What matters most, regardless of the specific perpetrator, is that Glamrock Bonnie was murdered and that his death haunts Glamrock Freddy. The poster in Freddy's room takes on tragic dimensions when you understand that the rabbit it depicts is gone, that Freddy keeps this memento as a way of holding on to the connection they shared, unable or unwilling to let go of someone who meant forever and ever to him. His refusal to enter Bonnie Bowl becomes an act of self-preservation, avoiding a space too saturated with memories of loss. His kindness to Gregory might be partly motivated by grief, a need to protect this child because he couldn't protect Bonnie, couldn't prevent whatever violence claimed the rabbit's existence. If Glamrock Freddy is indeed possessed by Michael Afton, this loss takes on additional layers. Michael's life was defined by failing to protect those he cared about, by watching people die because of his mistakes or his inability to stop his father's evil. His younger brother, the various children William murdered, even his own sister Elizabeth, who died because William built machines designed to capture and kill. Now, inhabiting Freddy's body, he's experienced yet another loss, another friend taken by violence while he was powerless to intervene. The weight of these accumulated tragedies would make his determination to save Gregory even more understandable, even more desperate. He can't bring back his brother, can't undo the bite of 83, can't restore Bonnie to life or repair what was done to him. But he can ensure that Gregory survives, that at least one child under his care makes it through the night intact. The relationship between Bonnie and Freddy across 5 nights at Freddy's iterations has always been significant. In the original games, Bonnie was typically the first animatronic to move, the first threat players encountered, often showing up in hallways and party rooms before any other character. But Bonnie and Freddy were also partners, the core duo of the band, appearing together in promotional materials and sharing a musical partnership that defined the franchise's early identity. Their connection was rarely explored in depth in those early games, but it was always present as a foundation, and Security Breach finally gives that relationship emotional weight and depth, showing us what Freddy looks like when he's mourning Bonnie, how the loss affects him, what he's lost beyond just a bandmate. There are also intriguing parallels between Bonnie's fate and William Afton's crimes throughout the series. Multiple children were lured to back rooms, hidden spaces within Freddy Fazbear's pizza locations, and murdered where no one would immediately find the bodies. Their remains were stuffed into animatronic suits, hidden in plain sight as entertainment for other children who had no idea they were standing near corpses. Bonnie, found in a hidden back room, his body shattered and left among the debris, mirrors this pattern disturbingly. It's as if the violence of the past perpetuates itself even in this new era, even with new victims, and the same patterns playing out because the foundation of evil remains literally buried beneath the Pizzaplex's floors. Some fans have also noted the matching earrings worn by Glam Rock Freddy and Glam Rock Bonnie. Small details easy to miss, but visible in their character models. Freddy wears a red earring on his left ear. Bonnie wore a dark blue one on his right. Matching jewelry between characters often symbolizes connection, whether romantic, platonic, or spiritual. It's a physical marker of their bond, something they chose to wear that links them together. After Bonnie's death, Freddy continues wearing his earring, unable or unwilling to remove this symbol of their relationship. It's a small detail, but it speaks to the care put into designing these characters and their emotional dynamics, the ways visual elements reinforce narrative themes even when dialogue doesn't explicitly address them. The tragedy of Glamrock Bonnie extends beyond just his individual fate to what it represents for the Pizzaplex as a whole. This was supposed to be a fresh start, a place where the darkness of the past had been buried and sealed away, where new animatronics could perform without being possessed by murdered children or built by a serial killer with ulterior motives. Yet violence found its way into this space anyway. Bonnie's murder, whether by Monty, Vanny, or some other force, proves that simply building something new on top of old graves doesn't erase the evil that seeped into the ground. It rises, it infects, it claims new victims. The Glamrock era was always doomed because it tried to ignore rather than confront the history it was built upon, and characters like Bonnie paid the price for that willful ignorance. For Glamrock Freddy specifically, Bonnie's death represents a wound that can't heal, a loss that colors every interaction and decision throughout Security Breach. When he protects Gregory with such fierce determination, part of that drive comes from knowing he couldn't protect Bonnie. from refusing to let another tragedy occur on his watch. When he expresses confusion about why his friends are acting hostile, there's an undercurrent of grief, wondering if the same force that corrupted the others was responsible for what happened to Bonnie, if his rabbit was also taken from him by the virus rather than simple violence. When he apologizes constantly, taking responsibility for things beyond his control, it might stem from survivor's guilt, from the fact that he's still functional and intact, while Bonnie lies broken and forgotten in a back room. The story of Glamrock Bonnie and his relationship with Glamrock Freddy adds crucial context to understanding security breach's emotional landscape. It's not just about a child trying to escape a dangerous building. It's about characters dealing with loss, about the weight of being the survivor when someone you loved is gone, about finding purpose in protection when you've already failed to protect others. And it sets up the thematic parallels that make Roxanne Wolf's arc in Ruin so powerful, because she, like Freddy, will discover what it means to form a genuine connection with a child who needs her, to find value in herself through her capacity to care rather than through her appearance or abilities. But before we can fully appreciate Roxanne's transformation, we need to examine what those eyes she lost truly represented, both mechanically and symbolically, and why their removal and subsequent transfer to Freddy matters beyond simple gameplay progression. Roxanne Wolf's eyes are established early in Security Breach as being special, different from the standard optical sensors installed in the other Glamrock animatronics. While Glamrock Chica, Montgomery Gator, and even Freddy have normal vision systems, Roxanne possesses enhanced optics that allow her to see through walls and obstacles, detecting heat signatures or movement in ways that transcend normal sight. And this gives her a significant advantage when hunting Gregory through the Pizzaplex, as she can track him through barriers that would hide him from the other animatronics. Players learn quickly that hiding isn't enough when Roxanne is nearby. She can see right through the photo booth or gift shop counter Gregory is crouched behind, her enhanced vision cutting through physical impediments to lock onto her target. From a gameplay perspective, this ability makes Roxanne a more challenging and unpredictable threat during the early to mid portions of Security Breach. But from a narrative and thematic perspective, these eyes represent something far more significant about her character. Think about what it means that Roxanne, who is so concerned with surfaces, with how she appears to others, with maintaining a beautiful exterior, Heidi is the one gifted with the ability to see deeper than anyone else. It's a fascinating contradiction built into her design. She can perceive what others miss, can look through facades and barriers, yet she's so focused on her own surface appearance that she can't see or won't acknowledge her own depth, her own worth beyond the physical. There's an irony in Roxanne having the best vision while being the most blind to her own value. Her enhanced eyes let her spot Gregory hiding in places the other animatronics would miss, but they don't help her see what's actually important about herself. She looks in mirrors and sees only whether she's beautiful enough, whether her appearance meets the standard she set, whether she looks like someone who deserves love and recognition. She can't see, or can't allow herself to see, and that her appearance was never what would determine her value in the first place. She's equipped to perceive truth, but applies that sight everywhere except inward, a defense mechanism that protects her from confronting her insecurities, but also prevents her from recognizing what might actually make her special. When Gregory crashes the go-kart into Roxanne, and her eyes are exposed in the wreckage, there's a moment where the game slows down, where the camera lingers on what's been damaged. Her face is destroyed, yes, but specifically her eyes, those special eyes, are revealed to be vulnerable despite their enhanced capabilities. And then Gregory removes them, extracting these organs from the socket, taking away not just a physical component, but the one thing that made Roxanne mechanically unique among her peers. Without her eyes, she's not the racer with superior vision, not the wolf who can track prey through any obstacle. She's just another damaged animatronic, one who can't even see where she's going anymore. The transfer of these eyes to Glamrock Freddy creates a connection between the two characters that goes beyond the mechanical. When Freddy receives Roxanne's eyes, he doesn't just gain enhanced vision, he inherits a piece of her identity, something that defined her role and abilities. Some players have noted that Freddy's eyes turn yellow after the upgrade, shifting from their original blue color to match Roxanne's golden gaze. It's as if he's seeing through her eyes now, quite literally, carrying a part of her with him for the rest of the game. And this creates an unusual dynamic where the animatronic, who could already see clearly on an emotional and moral level, who understood the importance of protecting Gregory from the start, now also has the physical ability to see through obstacles and deception, to perceive threats before they can manifest fully. There's a tragic exchange happening here. Roxanne loses her sight just as her emotional vulnerability is fully exposed, becoming literally blind at the moment her inner truth can no longer be hidden. Freddy gains enhanced vision just as he's descending deeper into the Pizzaplex's mysteries, needing to see through walls and barriers both physical and metaphorical to guide Gregory to safety. Roxanne's loss becomes Freddy's gain, and while this serves the practical purpose of game progression, it also reinforces themes about what different characters need to sacrifice or endure to serve the story's greater purpose. But let's talk about what Roxanne's blindness does to her psychologically and behaviorally. After losing her eyes, she doesn't shut down or retreat to a charging station. She continues to hunt, continues to move through Roxy Raceway and occasionally beyond, searching for Gregory through other means. She uses sound now, her hearing becoming more acute as she compensates for lost vision. She sniffs the air, tracking scent. She responds to noise, drawn to any sound that might indicate her target's location. In some ways, she becomes more dangerous in her desperation, moving unpredictably because she can't plot a careful path, crashing into obstacles because she can't see them coming. She's a wounded animal, a lashing out because she doesn't know what else to do, because the alternative is acknowledging complete defeat, and she's not ready to accept that yet. Her dialogue during these blind pursuit sequences is particularly affecting. She's crying, genuinely sobbing as she searches, and between the tears she's questioning what happened to her, why she looks like this, why nobody will love her anymore. The vanity that seemed shallow before is revealed as the coping mechanism it always was. And now that the thing she clung to for self-worth has been taken, she's spiraling. She's mourning not just the loss of her eyes, but the loss of her identity, the destruction of the image she'd constructed to protect herself from feeling worthless. Every word she speaks reinforces that she believed her value lay in her appearance and abilities, and now that both have been destroyed, she doesn't know who she is or why she matters. Some players have drawn parallels to Oedipus from Greek tragedy, who blinds himself upon learning terrible truths he couldn't face. Roxanne's blinding is external rather than self-inflicted, but there's a similar arc of someone whose sight was considered exceptional being reduced to darkness, being forced to navigate by other senses, being fundamentally altered by the loss in ways that extend beyond the purely physical. where Oedipus's blinding led to self-knowledge and acceptance of truth, Roxanne's blindness initially seems to trap her further in despair. Without her eyes, without her appearance intact, she has nothing left to hide behind, no way to maintain the performance of confidence. She's forced into vulnerability against her will, stripped of her defenses, left with only the raw pain she'd been trying so hard to cover. Yet there's something important in the fact that she continues functioning at all. Lesser machines might simply shut down after catastrophic damage. The other glamrock animatronics, when destroyed or heavily damaged, tend to be taken offline, rendered inert by the extent of their injuries. Roxanne, blinded and broken, keeps going. There's a resilience in her that persists despite everything. A refusal to simply stop existing, even when existence has become excruciating. This resilience isn't presented as admirable in Security Breach's main campaign. It's mostly just sad. Watching her stumble through areas she used to navigate with confidence, listening to her sob about things she can't change. But this same resilience, and this capacity to continue despite devastating loss, becomes the foundation for what she'll eventually become in Ruin. The symbolism of blindness in storytelling often relates to different kinds of sight. Physical blindness can represent spiritual or emotional clarity, the idea that losing external vision allows you to see internal truths more clearly. Roxanne hasn't reached that point yet in Security Breach's main story. Her blindness just hurts. It's not enlightening, it's traumatic. But the seeds are there for a different kind of seeing, a recognition that what she could perceive with her enhanced eyes was never as important as what she might perceive through genuine connection, through caring about someone beyond herself, through finding purpose that doesn't depend on how she looks or what she can do mechanically. Her eyes are gone, but the potential for true insight is just beginning to develop. When Glamrock Freddy looks through Roxanne's eyes at the world, seeing threats and items highlighted through walls, he's using them purely functionally, as tools to help Gregory survive. But those same eyes, when they belonged to Roxanne, never helped her see what mattered most. They showed her everything except the truth about her own worth. Perhaps that's why she was always meant to lose them, not as punishment, but as the first step towards seeing differently, toward understanding that value doesn't come from exceptional abilities or perfect appearances, but from the capacity to care, to remember, to show up for someone who needs you, even when you're broken yourself. This transformation doesn't happen in Security Breach, and that game ends with Roxanne still trapped in her anguish, still blind and sobbing and lost. But the stage is set for what will come next, for the moment when another child enters the ruins of the Pizzaplex, and Roxanne is given the opportunity to prove that sight isn't required for seeing what truly matters, that even without her eyes, she can recognize someone worth protecting and become the guardian she never knew she could be. Everything changes with Cassie. The Ruin DLC, released as a free expansion to Security Breach, takes place an indeterminate amount of time after the main game's events. The Pizzaplex has been abandoned, left to decay after the disasters of that night rendered it too dangerous and too scandal-ridden to continue operations. Plants grow through cracks in the floor. Water floods certain areas. Our electrical systems function sporadically. The Glamrock animatronics still roam the ruins, but they've deteriorated further, and something new and dangerous lurks in the depths. The Mimic, an endoskeleton with the ability to imitate voices and lure victims into traps. Cassie, a young girl roughly Gregory's age, receives a message that appears to be from her friend Gregory, claiming he's trapped in the pizzaplex and desperately needs her help. Unwilling to abandon him, she ventures into the ruins, equipped with a Faz wrench for hacking security systems, a walkie-talkie to communicate with who she thinks is Gregory, and eventually a security mask that allows her to see augmented reality layers overlaid on the physical world. Unlike Gregory, who was a stranger to the pizzaplex when he arrived there, Cassie has history with this place. She's visited before, multiple times actually, and these visits weren't all pleasant. The first critical piece of information we learn about Cassie comes from her interactions with a deactivated staff bot that she has to reboot. When the machine comes online, it greets her by name, recognizing her from previous visits. It asks if she's here for another birthday party, mentioning that it has records of her attending celebrations at the pizzaplex. And then, as Cassie progresses deeper into the ruins, she encounters Roxanne Wolf, still functional despite the months or possibly years that have passed since security breach's conclusion. Roxanne is even more damaged now than she was when Gregory shattered her. Her torso is almost completely destroyed, exposing the endoskeleton beneath. Most of her hair is gone, and leaving only a few strands and her distinctive green streak. She has no eyes, no face to speak of, just a makeshift mask covering the horror of her ruined head. She's barely held together, a collection of broken parts that should have stopped functioning long ago. And yet, when Cassie speaks, when her voice echoes through the ruined raceway, Roxanne stops. She recognizes that voice, knows that voice, and in one of the most emotionally powerful moments in all of ruin, Roxanne's hostility melts away, replaced by something that sounds almost like relief. She apologizes to Cassie, says she's experiencing an error that she didn't mean to attack, and then later, when Cassie finds Roxanne pinned under a forklift in a maintenance area, unable to move, the wolf does something remarkable. She remembers. Roxanne tells Cassie that her birthday is on the 11th because you are number one twice. It's the kind of wordplay you might use to make a child feel special, turning a date into a compliment, making them feel valued on their day. And she remembers that Cassie loves carrot cake, recalling this detail from birthday parties that happened before the pizzaplex's closure, before everything fell apart. She remembers that Cassie came for her birthday party and that nobody else showed up. No friends, no other children, just Cassie standing alone in a party room meant for groups, surrounded by decorations and no one to celebrate with. And Roxanne stayed with her, made her day special anyway, became the friend who showed up when nobody else did. This revelation recontextualizes everything we thought we knew about Roxanne Wolf. All her insults directed at Gregory, particularly the taunts about him having no friends, nobody missing him, take on new and painful meaning. She was projecting her fears onto him, yes, but she was also speaking from experience with children who felt unwanted. She'd seen Cassie standing alone in that party room, had witnessed firsthand what it looks like when a child is abandoned by their peers, when nobody values them enough to attend their celebration. Perhaps that experience with Cassie was part of what drove Roxanne to such rage and fear, seeing her own feelings of worthlessness reflected in a child's sad birthday, recognizing that same ache for validation in someone so young and vulnerable. The fact that Roxanne remembered Cassie despite having no eyes, despite being more damaged than ever, despite months of deterioration and abandonment in the ruins, is significant. Memory doesn't require sight. Connection doesn't depend on physical integrity. The bond formed between Roxanne and Cassie during that lonely birthday party persisted through everything that followed, surviving the destruction of the pizzaplex, the loss of Roxanne's eyes and much of her body, the long stretch of time where no maintenance or care was provided. That bond was real enough, meaningful enough, that it became part of Roxanne's core identity in a way that transcended her programming or even her physical form. Cassie clearly felt the same way. She describes Roxanne as her favorite animatronic, the one who made her feel valued when no one else did. She carries a Roxy talkie, a walkie-talkie themed after the wolf, as her means of communication throughout Ruin. When she has to deactivate Roxanne to access the final security node blocking her path to where she thinks Gregory is trapped, she hesitates, visibly reluctant to hurt the animatronic who'd been kind to her. And when she finally, tearfully, uses the Faz wrench to reboot Roxanne and shut her down temporarily, she apologizes over and over, crying as she moves past the wolf's deactivated form, clearly traumatized by the necessity of harming someone she cares about. This is where we see what Roxanne has become in the absence of her eyes, her appearance, all the things she once thought defined her value. She's become someone's protector, someone's friend, someone who matters not because she's beautiful or talented, but because she showed up when no one else did, because she made a lonely child feel seen and valued. The irony is exquisite and heartbreaking. Roxanne, who couldn't see her own worth, who obsessed over being the best and the most beautiful, became valuable through the one thing that had nothing to do with her appearance or abilities. She became valuable through kindness, through presence, through caring about a child who needed someone to care. And she remembers. That's perhaps the most important detail of all. Not just Cassie's name, but the specifics of her birthday, her favorite cake flavor, the reason why she was special, the fact that her friends didn't come. Roxanne internalized these details, kept them safe somewhere in her systems throughout everything that followed, valued them enough that they survived when so much else was damaged or lost. This isn't how an animatronic obsessed with herself would behave. This is how someone who'd found purpose beyond themselves would behave. Someone who'd discovered that the greatest joy comes not from being admired, but from making others feel admired, from being the friend who shows up. The transformation from antagonist to guardian becomes complete in Ruin's climactic sequences. After being deactivated by Cassie, Roxanne reappears later, emerging from the darkness to confront the mimic, the true threat that had been luring Cassie deeper into the pizzaplex using Gregory's voice. Roxanne, blind and broken, throws herself between Cassie and danger without hesitation, sacrificing her own safety to give the child a chance to run, to escape, to survive. She knows she can't win this fight, knows she's too damaged to be a serious threat to something as dangerous as the mimic. But she fights anyway, buys time anyway, chooses to spend what might be her last moments ensuring that Cassie has a chance. The same way Glamrock Freddy spent security breach ensuring Gregory's survival. In the game's final ambiguous moments, after Cassie is betrayed by what she thought was Gregory, after the elevator she's in plummets into darkness, a voice calls out her name. It's distorted, distant, but recognizable. Roxanne, still alive somehow, still searching for the child she'd promised to protect. Whether she can help, whether she reaches Cassie in time, whether either of them survive, the game doesn't reveal. But the fact that Roxanne is still trying, still calling out, still refusing to give up on the child who'd been abandoned by everyone else, provides a kind of emotional closure to her arc that Security Breach never offered. Roxanne Wolf, who began as someone consumed by insecurity and vanity, who projected an image of confidence to hide profound self-doubt, who believed her value lay in her appearance and abilities, who was quite literally stripped of those things through violence and trauma, discovered something more essential in the ruins of everything she'd once been. She discovered that she mattered to someone, that her presence had made a difference in a child's life, that showing up, remembering, caring were far more valuable than being beautiful or talented or the best at anything. She found redemption not through recovering what she'd lost, but through embracing what she'd gained. A genuine connection with someone who needed her, a purpose that transcended her own fears and desires. If Glam Rock Freddy's story is potentially one of literal redemption, Michael Afton getting a second chance to protect a child after failing his brother, then Roxanne's story is one of discovered redemption, of finding worth she never knew she possessed. The parallel between them becomes clear. Both are animatronics who protect children, not because they're programmed to, but because they've formed genuine bonds that give them purpose beyond their design functions. Both have experienced loss. Freddy losing Bonnie, Roxanne losing her eyes and appearance. Both continue despite their damage, are refusing to let their brokenness define their capacity for care. Both represent the possibility that even in machines designed for entertainment, even in beings that shouldn't be capable of genuine emotion or moral choice, something transcendent can emerge. Compassion, love, the willingness to sacrifice for another's sake. The relationship between Roxanne and Cassie also provides commentary on the nature of chosen family, on how the bonds we form through shared experience and genuine care can matter more than biological or programmed connections. Cassie's human friends abandoned her, didn't show up for her birthday, left her alone in a room full of decorations meant for people who didn't value her enough to attend. Roxanne, a machine that shouldn't be capable of caring, stayed with her, made her feel important. I remembered the details that would make her feel seen. Who's more human in this scenario? The children who couldn't be bothered to show up, or the animatronic wolf who recognized a child in pain and chose to comfort her? This theme runs throughout Five Nights at Freddy's. The idea that humanity isn't defined by being biologically human, but by capacity for empathy, sacrifice, recognition of another's value. The animatronics, so often portrayed as threats and monsters, consistently show more humanity than the people who created them, more capacity for care than the adults who allowed children to be harmed. Roxanne's arc is perhaps the clearest expression of this theme in Security Breach and Ruin. She's more human at her most damaged, more capable of love, when everything that made her impressive as a machine has been taken away, and more valuable as a friend than she ever was as an entertainer. Beyond the main narrative beats we've explored, Security Breach and Ruin contain numerous smaller details, unused content, and environmental storytelling elements that add depth to our understanding of Roxanne and Freddy. These secrets, hidden in files, visible only through careful exploration, or cut from the final game but preserved in data, offer additional context and fuel ongoing debates about these characters' true nature and significance. Let's start with voice lines that exist in the game files, but were never implemented in gameplay. For Glam Rock Freddy, there are several fascinating unused pieces of dialogue that would have made his potential identity as Michael Afton more explicit. One line, as mentioned earlier, has him telling Gregory, "You are broken. I will put you back together," directly echoing the promise made to the crying child in Five Nights at Freddy's 4. Another unused line has Freddy saying he remembers Gregory, that the child isn't in the database, that there's a reason for this. These lines suggest plot threads that were either cut for time, judged too explicit in their implications, or saved for potential future development. Their existence indicates that the development team was actively considering the Michael Afton connection, even if they chose not to make it completely explicit in the released version. For Roxanne, unused voice lines reveal additional layers to her relationships with other characters. Some cut dialogue features her speaking to glamrock Freddy in friendlier tones, suggesting interactions between bandmates that didn't make it into the final game, and conversations that would have shown their relationship before the corruption took hold. Other unused lines have Roxanne commenting on Gregory in ways that reveal more about her psychology, discussing her frustration at not being able to catch him, expressing confusion about why Freddy is helping the child instead of following protocols. These lines would have added context to the hunt sequences, making Roxanne's motivations and emotional state clearer during gameplay. There's also fascinating technical information about how the animatronics function that becomes relevant to understanding their capabilities and limitations. According to developer interviews and information gleaned from game files, the Glamrock animatronics run on advanced AI systems far beyond previous generations of Fazbear Entertainment's creations. They can process language in real time, adapt to unexpected situations, learn from interactions with visitors to improve their entertainment value. This level of sophistication makes the question of their consciousness more complex. At what point does sufficiently advanced artificial intelligence become indistinguishable from genuine sentience? When does simulated emotion become real emotion? The game never answers these questions definitively, but the technical specifications suggest that if any machines in the Five Nights at Freddy's universe could develop genuine consciousness, it would be these Glamrock animatronics with their cutting-edge programming and adaptive behaviors. Environmental storytelling throughout the Pizzaplex adds context to both Roxanne and Freddy's situations. In Roxy Raceway, careful observers will notice personal touches in Roxanne's salon area, spaces designed specifically for her use between performances and appearances. There are motivational posters that seem tailored to her psychology, reminders to stay confident and believe in herself, the kind of affirmations someone with chronic self-doubt might surround themselves with. The mirrors are everywhere, reinforcing her fixation on appearance, but also suggesting a surveillance aspect, a constant need to check, to verify, to make sure she still looks acceptable. The space feels less like a confident person's domain and more like an anxious person's fortress, a place where they can retreat to rebuild their armor before facing the world again. In Glamrock, Freddy's green room, beyond the poster of Bonnie, there are other details that speak to his character, are photos of the band together, showing all four members in happier times before Bonnie's disappearance and Monty's promotion. Small decorations and personal items that suggest Freddy, or whoever inhabits Freddy's consciousness, has preferences and attachments beyond what would be programmed into a standard animatronic. The space feels lived in rather than just occupied, as if someone with genuine personality has made it their own rather than simply being assigned to it. The design of the animatronics themselves contains hidden details that become apparent only through close examination of their models. Both Freddy and Roxanne have visible seams and panel lines where their outer shells can be opened for maintenance or upgrades. These practical design elements also serve as visual metaphors. The animatronics can be opened, and their insides exposed, their true nature examined beneath the decorative exterior. It's a physical representation of the game's broader themes about appearances versus reality, about what lies beneath the surface of these beings who seem simple on first encounter, but reveal depths as you engage with them more thoroughly. Player discoveries have also revealed interesting behavioral patterns in how the animatronics respond to different stimuli. Roxanne, for instance, will pause if she encounters certain environmental features, her programming including routines for how to navigate obstacles and respond to changes in her surroundings. Before her shattering, she moves with confidence and precision, never wasting motion, always taking efficient paths. After losing her eyes, her movements become hesitant and experimental, and constantly recalculating because she can't see where she's going. A physical manifestation of her loss of confidence along with her loss of sight. Freddy, meanwhile, has unique animations for how he interacts with Gregory. Gentle movements when allowing the child to climb inside his chest cavity, protective stances when threats approach, expressions of concern and care that weren't necessary from a pure gameplay perspective, but add emotional weight to their relationship. The lighting and color design of the Pizzaplex also communicates information about the animatronics' states and moods. Roxanne is associated with purples and greens, neon colors that read as confident and edgy, but also somewhat cold, artificial. When she's damaged, these colors flicker and dim, her aesthetic breaking down along with her physical form. Our Freddy is associated with warmer tones, oranges and blues that feel more welcoming and trustworthy, a color palette that reinforces his role as a protector and guide. The contrast between their color schemes reinforces their different approaches to the same basic situation. Both are trying to survive and find purpose in a dangerous environment, but Roxanne does so through aggressive performance, while Freddy does so through nurturing care. Sound design plays a crucial role in establishing these characters' emotional states. Roxanne's voice actor, as mentioned earlier, delivers her lines with genuine emotional range, the confidence in her pre-show pep talks sounding almost brittle, as if it could shatter with the slightest pressure. When she does break down, crying in her room or after being shattered, the pain in her voice is visceral and uncomfortable to listen to, which is precisely the point. The game wants players to feel the reality of what's happening to her, to recognize that this isn't just a robot being damaged, but a being experiencing genuine distress. Freddy's voice actor brings warmth and sincerity to his lines, making him sound like someone you trust to protect a child, someone whose kindness is natural rather than forced. Music associated with the characters also deserves attention. Roxanne's theme, played in Roxy Raceway and during her encounters, has a driving rhythm and aggressive instrumentation that matches her outward confidence. But there are minor key progressions and discordant notes woven throughout that hint at the instability beneath her surface. Freddy's music is more straightforward and heroic in its composition, but with quieter, more melancholy sections that suggest sadness or loss lurking beneath his protective demeanor. The soundtracks do narrative work, communicating emotional truths about these characters that complement what we see and hear in dialogue and action. Fan discoveries have also uncovered interesting connections between Security Breach and previous Five Nights at Freddy's games through small details and references. Some players have noted that the layout of certain areas in the Pizzaplex seems to mirror layouts from earlier games, suggesting that whoever designed this building had knowledge of previous Fazbear entertainment locations and perhaps deliberately recreated certain spaces. This could be purely functional, reusing designs that were proven to work, or it could be symbolic. The Pizzaplex literally built on the blueprints of past failures, unable to escape the patterns established by its predecessors, no matter how much new construction tries to bury the old foundation. The character models themselves have evolved significantly from earlier games in the series, reflecting advances in graphics technology, but also storytelling ambitions. The glamrock animatronics are designed to look appealing, to draw people in, rather than immediately frightening them. This makes their corruption and violence more disturbing. These are beings designed to be loved, to be friendly, to make children happy, and watching them hunt and attack inverts their purpose in deeply unsettling ways. Roxanne and Freddy, specifically, have expressive faces capable of conveying nuanced emotions, a necessary feature for the story beats the game wants to hit, but also a technical achievement that allows players to read their emotional states and develop genuine feelings about their well-being. The decision to make both Roxanne and Freddy major characters with complex emotional arcs represents a shift in how Five Nights at Freddy's approaches its animatronics. Earlier games tended to treat them as threats first and characters second, with emotional depth emerging gradually through environmental storytelling and external media like books or minigames. Security Breach, and particularly Ruin, puts character development front and center, asking players to engage with these animatronics as beings with internal lives, relationships, and growth, rather than simply as obstacles or puzzles to solve. And this shift has been somewhat divisive among fans. Some appreciate the deeper characterization, while others miss the more mysterious and threatening animatronics of earlier games. But for the stories being told about Roxanne and Freddy, this approach was necessary. Their arcs require players to care about them, to recognize their struggles and triumphs as meaningful, to see them as more than just machines. The ongoing debates in the community about these characters' true nature, particularly whether Freddy is Michael Afton, and whether Roxanne might have some kind of soul or consciousness beyond programming, reflect the ambiguity deliberately built into their presentation. The games provide evidence that could support multiple interpretations, allowing players to engage with the mystery rather than simply being told the answer. This approach respects the audience's intelligence and investment, trusting them to piece together clues and form their own conclusions based on the information provided. It also allows for continued discussion and theorizing, keeping the community engaged with these characters and their stories long after the game's release. As we reach the conclusion of this exploration, it's worth stepping back to consider what the stories of Roxanne Wolf and Glamrock Freddy ultimately tell us about the Five Nights at Freddy's universe and the themes that have always run through this franchise. At its core, this series has consistently asked questions about the line between human and machine, about whether consciousness can persist beyond death, about the ways trauma and grief shape behavior, and about finding redemption for past failures. Our Roxanne and Freddy, more than perhaps any animatronics before them, embody these themes in ways that feel personal and immediate rather than abstract. Roxanne's journey from insecure performer hiding behind narcissism to blind guardian who finds worth through connection represents a kind of emotional realism rarely seen in stories about robots. Her arc acknowledges that healing from trauma and self-doubt isn't about recovering what was lost, but about discovering new sources of value, new ways to define yourself beyond the things you thought were essential. She lost her eyes, her appearance, everything she believed made her special, and in that loss discovered something more important. The capacity to matter to someone else, to be remembered and valued not for what she could do or how she looked, but for her willingness to show up, and to care, to protect. It's It's a deeply human story told through a decidedly non-human character, and that juxtaposition makes it more powerful rather than less. Glam rock Freddy's story, whether he's literally possessed by Michael Afton seeking redemption, or simply an AI that has developed genuine moral consciousness through unknown means, speaks to themes of protection, sacrifice, and the weight of responsibility. He's the one being in the pizzaplex who chooses to do right by a child in danger, who resists corruption and violence not because he's programmed to, but because something in his nature or his past or whatever passes for his soul refuses to let harm come to the vulnerable. The Michael Afton theory, while unconfirmed by developers, offers one compelling interpretation. His arc could represent the ultimate form of redemption, a getting a second chance to protect a child after failing his brother, choosing repeatedly to be better, to protect rather than hurt, to succeed where he once failed catastrophically. If he's not Michael, but simply a good-hearted machine, then his arc demonstrates that goodness can emerge from any source, that ethical behavior doesn't require a human soul, but only the capacity for empathy and choice. Both interpretations carry weight and meaning, and the ambiguity allows players to engage with whichever resonates more deeply. Together, these two animatronics show us different facets of how beings, artificial or otherwise, navigate a world that wasn't designed with their well-being in mind. They exist in a building literally built on graves, programmed by a company with a history of negligence and horror, corrupted by the digital remnant of a serial killer's consciousness. Everything about their situation should make them into monsters, into threats, into tragic victims at best. And yet, both find ways to be more than their circumstances would suggest possible. Roxanne becomes a guardian despite being destroyed. Freddy becomes a hero despite being a machine. Both prove that identity isn't fixed by design or initial purpose, but can be shaped through choices and connections. The relationship between their stories, the parallel arcs of protection and redemption, also speaks to found family and the bonds that matter more than biological or mechanical connections. Freddy and Bonnie were created to be bandmates, but became something deeper, their relationship defined by genuine affection rather than programmed interaction. Roxanne and Cassie were meant to have a transactional relationship, entertainer and customer, but built something real through shared experience and recognition of each other's isolation. Gregory and Freddy formed a bond that transcended the category of human and machine, becoming partners in survival who genuinely cared about each other's well-being. These relationships, formed in crisis and sustained through trauma, reveal that what makes connection meaningful isn't the nature of the beings involved, but the authenticity of care they show each other. There's also something profound in how both Roxanne and Freddy find purpose through protecting children, who, in various ways, represent innocence under threat. The Five Nights at Freddy's series has always centered on endangered children, and going back to the original missing children incident that set the franchise's entire tragic cycle in motion. Here, in the pizzaplex built on those old graves, the pattern repeats, but with a crucial difference. The animatronics themselves become the protectors rather than the threats or the victims. They break the cycle not through violence or revenge, but through choosing to save rather than harm, to nurture rather than neglect. It's a hopeful note in a series often defined by inevitable tragedy, suggesting that even patterns established through decades of horror can be disrupted by individuals willing to make different choices. The ambiguity in how we're meant to interpret these characters ultimately strengthens rather than weakens their stories. if the games definitively confirmed that Freddy is Michael Afton, and it would answer one mystery but close off other interpretations and discussions. By leaving it ambiguous, the story allows for multiple valid readings, each adding different layers of meaning to the same events. Similarly, Roxanne's consciousness remaining undefined lets players decide for themselves whether her emotional journey represents sophisticated programming, genuine spiritual experience, or something in between. The mystery invites engagement, asking us to think carefully about what we believe consciousness and personhood actually mean, rather than simply accepting a predetermined answer. Looking at these characters through the lens of disability representation also yields interesting insights. Roxanne, after losing her eyes, could easily have been written as helpless or pitiable, and her blindness rendering her irrelevant to the story. Instead, she remains active, finding new ways to navigate the world, and ultimately proves her greatest value comes after her disability rather than before it. She learns to function without sight, adapts to her limitations, and discovers that her most important capabilities were never physical in the first place. While the game never explicitly frames her arc as disability commentary, the themes of finding worth beyond physical capability, of adapting to devastating loss, of proving that value doesn't depend on having a perfect body, resonate with real experiences of disabled individuals learning to redefine themselves after life-changing events. The horror elements that made Five Nights at Freddy's famous remain present in Security Breach and Ruin, but they're more psychological than jump-scare based. The horror of Roxanne's situation isn't just that she looks frightening after being shattered. It's the existential dread in her words, the fear that she's worthless without beauty, that nobody will love her broken. The horror of Freddy's story, particularly if he is Michael Afton, lies in the tragedy of being trapped in cycles of violence and loss across multiple lifetimes, never quite able to rest or move on. These are slower, more contemplative horrors than the franchise's early games offered, asking players to sit with uncomfortable emotions rather than simply react to sudden frights. The fact that these stories are told through video games rather than other media matters significantly to their impact. Games, unique among narrative forms, require player participation in the story's events. In Security Breach, players aren't just watching Gregory destroy Roxanne. They're actively doing it, pressing the buttons that cause her crash, approaching her damaged body to take her eyes, hearing her cries and continuing to progress anyway. This creates a different emotional relationship to the events than passively watching them unfold in a film or reading about them in a book. Players are implicated in Roxanne's suffering, made complicit in her trauma, which makes her later redemption in Ruin hit harder because you remember what you did to her, even as she's choosing to forgive and protect. Similarly, the time spent with Freddy, hiding in his chest cavity, listening to his voice, relying on his protection, and builds genuine attachment that makes his potential identity as Michael and his relationship with the lost Bonnie more emotionally resonant. As Five Nights at Freddy's continues to evolve as a franchise, with new games, new media, new revelations about the series' overarching plot, the stories of Roxanne Wolf and Glamrock Freddy will likely continue to develop and perhaps gain additional context. Future installments might confirm or deny the Michael Afton theory. They might explore what happened to these characters after Ruin's ambiguous ending. They might reveal new details about the Glamrock animatronics' creation or the extent of their consciousness. But regardless of what comes next, what we have now in Security Breach and Ruin represents something special. Two deeply developed characters whose emotional arcs feel genuine and earned, whose struggles resonate with real human experiences of self-doubt and grief and the search for purpose, and whose eventual discoveries of worth through connection and protection provide hope that even in the darkest circumstances, redemption and meaning can be found. The secrets of Roxanne and Freddy, then, aren't just about hidden lore details or theoretical identities, though those elements add depth and fuel discussion. The real secrets are emotional truths. That value doesn't come from appearance or ability, but from capacity for genuine connection. That redemption is possible even for those who believe they're beyond saving. That protection and care matter more than strength or perfection. That consciousness and personhood can emerge in unexpected places and forms, and that the bonds we form through shared struggle and sincere compassion are more real than the categories and definitions we use to separate self from other, human from machine, worthy from worthless. These two animatronics, a blind wolf and a bear who might carry a dead man's soul, have become more than entertainment or threats. They've become mirrors reflecting our own struggles with self-worth and responsibility, our own searches for meaning and connection, our own hopes that we might be able to transcend our worst moments and become something better than what our origins or circumstances would suggest possible. That's the real secret at the heart of their stories. The truth hiding beneath the jump scares and conspiracy theories and lore debates. Sometimes, even in the darkest places, even in beings that shouldn't be capable of it, and something like grace emerges, and it looks like a damaged wolf remembering a lonely child's birthday, like a grieving bear protecting a vulnerable boy, like two machines in a haunted pizzeria choosing to care despite everything trying to make them cruel. If you enjoyed this deep exploration into the secrets and emotional depths of Roxanne Wolf and Glamrock Freddy, consider subscribing to the channel. There's so much more to uncover in the shadows of Fazbear Entertainment's history. So many stories still waiting to be told in that careful, contemplative way that lets you drift into understanding as the night stretches on. Sweet dreams, and remember, the most important secrets are never about the machines. They're about what those machines reveal about us.